You are listening to the Keeping It Juicy podcast,
your main squeeze in nutrition.
Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon on YouTube so you can get notified every Tuesday when we upload a new episode.
You can also add us on Facebook and Instagram at Keeping It Juicy Podcast.
Hello, welcome to episode 48. This is going to be our diseases associated with the gut, and it is part 2 of our gut month.
But before that, let's go into our new nutrition in the news. I mean, it might not be so new now. I mean, everybody has already started talking about this documentary already. And if you guys don't know what that is called, the documentary is called The Game Changers. And it's available on Netflix. I don't know if it's available on any other streaming devices or not.
No. I don't think so. I think it's just Netflix right now.
So if you don't have Netflix, might be. But it basically is a documentary that follows a former UFC fighter named James Wilkes, which is annoying. Okay, I need to stop. I'll talk about him later. But you followed.
Who he is?
Well,
I should, but I don't.
No, he's a UFC fighter. I mean, it's just we'll talk more. But basically, he's recovering from an injury that happened, I guess, in training or whatever, and he travels the world. What does this man have money? He just travels the world. Okay. And he talks with elite athletes that follow plant-based diets. He emphasizes plant-based diet, but as I talk about this documentary more, he goes into veganism. So that is not particularly the same as a plant-based diet. They're not same. No. If you want to know more about plant-based diet, please refer back to our previous episode specifically on plant-based diets, and that includes a variety of diets. Mm-hmm. So he also interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know why he's on here, but Arnold Schwarzenegger, Patrick Baboumian. Basically, I think he's a heavy lifter in the documentary that tried to lift over 1,000 pounds, and Darcy Bausch. I probably butchered the names.
Probably.
But basically, as he goes along, he interviews people. He comes across a lot of athletes that go towards veganism and I guess have better performances, Olympic athletes, and they're just doing a whole lot better. But I'm not saying veganism is bad at all. Like veganism, which is completely fine if you want to be vegan for whatever reason, that's perfectly great. But there's a difference. What frustrates me is that he keeps interchanging between plant-based versus vegan diets, and that is not the same. Plant-based you can be vegan, you can be vegetarian, you can even have a Mediterranean lifestyle, and all of which is considered plant-based. Mm-hmm. Like, in order to be plant-based, you don't just have to be vegan.
Mm-hmm. And something that I learned, especially when we did our vegan experiment episode, there are so many products that are labeled as vegan that are not even close to plant-based or even healthy for that matter. So you can't interchange those terms. And that's a big problem within this documentary is that they throw these words around when they actually do have very specific meanings.
Right.
And it can become very confusing to the general public watching this documentary.
And what's even more frustrating is he presents a whole bunch of research and articles, but he only presents it from one side specifically, and that's infuriating because when you're in the field of research, you're supposed to look at both sides, not just plant-based diet itself. And he probably, the opposing studies that he found, he basically made it a point to point out, though, that the studies were funded by the dairy industry, that was funded by the meat industry, when there's plenty of articles that that are not funded, that are funded by research universities and other companies and whatnot.
Granted, there is some, issues of studies being funded by these industries, but
Right,
there are
right,
hundreds and thousands that are not. So when
right,
you cherry pick your evidence like that, it gives us the perception that, oh, that's all the research says. And that is so far from the truth.
right. And it's another thing that frustrated me was there was a scene in which uh he showed a dietitian on the news cycle that talked about, hey, it's okay to have red meat every once in a while. And he basically states, I can't believe she's suggesting this. Like our even dietitians are succumbing to this nonsense. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, just stuff like that. And another thing that was an issue was he decided to consult two doctors, one, both of which do studies in, I mean, a pretty subjective study, not an actual like study that you would find on a research article that you
Hmm.
and I would expect.
Hmm.
And the first one was a blood plasma study. So basically, he finds three NFL athletes, I believe, and
Yeah.
right, and then I believe the night for dinner, one day he fed them all like
It
a
was either
regular
like
burrito.
a plant-based type meat versus the actual meat. And
Right,
they made it very clear. They're like, "Oh, and this is like organic, like free range meat. So it's even the best of the best. Like it's not even the bad meat." Like they made sure to emphasize that. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is the absolute best meat you can get compared to a plant-based processed
and
product
just I mean, that way there already shows privilege.
and bias."
But yeah. So, I mean, one day he gives them meat-based foods and the next day he gives them plant-based foods and then he compares the blood plasma that was drawn, I believe, the day after or the morning after,
Hmm.
and the plant-based plasma of each NFL athlete was a little the plasma was more
A little
clear.
bit clearer, yeah.
Yeah, it's clear, and meat, uh, the meat-based blood
Hmm.
plasma
That
was
looks
a
more.
little bit foggy. I mean,
But they gave no other parameters,
no, they
like
gave
blood
none.
pressure,
Right,
cholesterol, like no other blood panels. They just showed color, and it's like, what does that even mean?
right. Another thing that he forgot to mention is after you consume food in general, there's gonna be shit floating around in your blood naturally. So that's still
Like,
I don't know. That's
nutrients.
I mean, there's gonna be lipids floating around. There's gonna be glucose
Yeah,
floating around.
yeah,
So he
that's normal.
right. So it's just frustrating to see that, and that was conducted by a doctor on three NFL athletes because that
Mhm.
totally depicts
That's the general
everybody.
population,
Right,
let's just,
right,
a good reflection of us all.
right. And then the next study, which cracked me up. Like if you guys saw me in the Dietetics Anonymous, if you looked at my story, like I don't even know how to explain this. So basically, um, again, I think they looked at four athletes, and
3
they
or
fed
4. Mhm.
3 or 4 athletes. Same thing as a previous study. One day they gave them meat based, next day they gave them plant based food, and this time instead of taking the blood plasma, they put some sort of detector on the inner thigh near the groin area,
Yeah.
and they checked how many erections they got throughout the night and for how long. And apparently, if you eat a meat-based one, you get less erections and it lasts less. Versus a plant-based one, you get what better
More
girth
and intensity, apparently.
and you get a better girth. Like, I mean, do you guys need a visual?
Just watch the documentary, you'll see what we're talking about. But,
Like,
yeah,
I mean, why include that? Why it's so
it's
what
a
about
little
the women?
random. It's a little random.
It's very random. Like, see, it gives them more erections, so it's better for you.
Right, right.
Like,
But
include,
it gives no that the graph they gave is no indication of actual health,
they're
you
like
know?
it since it provides. this probably means increased blood flow to the penis, so it's probably better for every
Better for
so it means it's better every other part of your body. Like, I was just like
It
I
was like a
said,
cheap shot, you know? It was just
why
like, why include this, you know?
and why did the doctors agree to participate in this?
Money.
How much did this UFC fighter has? Oh my god.
I don't know who, I mean, who produced it?
I don't know. But honestly, like we said, we don't have any issues with veganism itself or plant-based diets. We all agree that eating more plants and vegetables is better for your health.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the way this documentary was portrayed, like a couple of the other vegan documentaries that we've seen beforehand,
Mhm.
um, they're all biased and they don't present both sides, and they're typically done by, dare I say, thin white men.
Dare you say it? And I will say too, like we did our vegan experiment, and when was that? Like 3, 4 months ago at
Right,
this point. And I have kept a lot of habits that we
mm,
kind of focused on then too. Like my meat intake is still heavily down from
right,
that point. I have definitely made some steps forward and some steps back
right.
in more of a plant-based diet. So, but this documentary still isn't, this ain't it.
It doesn't help vegans out, I feel.
Or even just
Or
plant-based people in general. Like,
right.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still keeping a pretty similar diet. My meat intake is pretty down, but it's still you can't scare people into eating plant-based foods.
Mm-mm.
That's not how human nature works.
Mm-mm.
Like,
Exactly.
sure, some people can do all or nothing, but for people such as myself, at least, you need to do step by step, not all at once.
Exactly.
So,
So if this motivates you to try plant-based, that's fine. But just understand that there is a lot of bias behind pretty much any documentary you see on Netflix,
hmm,
or one that encourages a plant-based diet, there's going to be an equally obnoxious one trying to promote the carnivore diet. So just keep that in mind. Like they're all
right,
going to be over the top.
right. So, I don't know. Let us know your guys' thoughts, how you feel about it.
What you liked, what you didn't like.
Do you have more elections? Okay, this is.
Shut up. Don't
Oh
don't
man.
tell us that.
Okay, we're gonna be kicked off YouTube.
Oh man, let's move on.
Okay, so let's go to the bulk of the episode.
The bulk of the episode. So we are going to get into different diseases that kind of contribute or take place in your digestive system. So we will dive into what the digestive system actually is. So the digestive system is made up of your gastrointestinal tract, your liver, your pancreas, and your gallbladder. Together, all of these organs help your body digest food. Digestion is important for breaking food down into its nutrients, which your body uses for energy, growth, and cell repair. Some digestive diseases are acute, meaning they last for a short amount of time, while some are chronic or longer lasting, and some are congenital, which means you're born with it.
So, with that being said, keep that in mind, and we'll go into the types of different diseases associated with the gut or just the general GI tract and whatnot. So, the first one is celiac disease. So, I mean, we briefly touched upon this in our gluten episode, so please refer back to that. But for now, we'll just do a brief overview. So, celiac disease is a digestive disorder that damages the small intestine. So, people with celiac disease cannot eat gluten, which is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. The disease can cause long term digestive problems and keep you from getting the nutrients that you actually do need. So, long story short, the body views gluten as a foreign object and the immune system responds almost immediately. Over time, this chronic immune response causes severe damage to the small intestine. So, the process basically wipes out your villi, which is like little finger like structures, spirit fingers. So finger-like structures that help with nutrient absorption. Like we talked about before, it kind of flattens your villi and it prevents the there's less surface area for nutrients to be absorbed, basically. So again, over time, less villi equals less absorption equals more and more problems. You're gonna have 99 problems, man. So
Yep. So moving on to the next one. This is we're going to talk about irritable bowel syndrome, and this is just a huge kind of umbrella term. A lot of different symptoms and whatnot fall under this. Some of these symptoms could be pain in your abdomen, changes in bowel movements, which may contribute to diarrhea, constipation, or both. So, with IBS, you have these symptoms without any visible signs of damage or disease in your digestive tract. So, unfortunately, doctors aren't really sure what causes IBS, but changes might be recommended in your diet to help treat symptoms of IBS. Some of these changes may include eating more fiber, avoiding gluten, or following a special diet, which is called the low FODMAP diet. Different changes will affect different people with IBS because, again, there's so many different symptoms. It's very kind of individualized.
mhm.
Um, IBS may be treated with changes in your diet, but other lifestyle changes, medicines, probiotics, sometimes mental health therapies as well. You may need to try a few different treatments to see what works for you. Your doctor and dietitian can help you find the right treatment plan.
Right. Also, diet during a flare-up or remission may change as well. So during a flare-up, foods that may be better tolerated are low-fiber fruits, lean protein, refined grains, fully cooked non-cruciferous vegetables, liquid protein shakes. So basically, the foods that don't cause a lot of it's easier to break down, basically. So this is because these foods obviously are easier to digest, and I mean, if your bowel is already inflamed, well, you need to help your bowel digest it as much as you can. So foods that are thought to trigger flare up are insoluble fiber foods and or cruciferous vegetables. So basically anything with a shell or a peel. So think about whole nuts, broccoli, cauliflower, stuff like that. Lactose, non-absorbable sugars such as sugar alcohols. Oh God, sugar alcohols. High sugar foods, high fat foods, alcohol, coffee, and spicy foods. There's also a lifestyle component to this. So if you are a stress ball, like you stress about motherfucking everything,
Yeah.
it'll probably get worse. So during remission, a balanced whole food diet is typically recommended.
Hmm. Right. So, depending on if there's like a flare up, you might want to avoid certain things that could make you feel worse. But if you're not having problems, a whole food diet is recommended. I feel like we all go through phases of IBS from time to
Dude, I
time.
had temporary IBS in undergrad. I was like,
I
holy shit,
remember
man.
it's just every once in a while you go through a period and you're like, what is going on? IBS is one of those things that a lot of us, yeah, intermittent probably have it, but you just have to be in tune with your
Right.
body. So keep that in mind. But the next one that we want to talk about that is actually diagnosable and it is a type of IBS is Crohn's disease. So Crohn's disease is a chronic, long-lasting disease that causes inflammation and irritation in your digestive tract, anywhere from your mouth to your anus, because that's your actual your whole digestive tract.
Oh man.
But most of the time, this inflammation is found in the small intestine. And just like kind of all forms of IBS, there are periods of flare up and remission. The most common symptom of Crohn's disease are diarrhea, cramping and pain in your abdomen, and actually weight loss. Doctors aren't really sure what causes Crohn's disease. It's believed that Crohn's disease is caused by a combination of factors involving genetics and the environment, which are bacteria and viruses in this case, and an overactive immune system. It's kind of agreed upon that it's not necessarily caused by something you ate or in your diet. It's something else. But on a side note, a lot of inflammatory diseases have a very strong genetic component. So doctors will treat Crohn's disease with medicines, bowel rest, and in some cases, surgery is an option.
Mhm.
The goal of treatment is to decrease the inflammation and to prevent flare ups in your symptoms and to keep you in remission.
So with that being said, we're gonna go into this specific disease, and I feel like it sounds painful, like looking at it, and that's diverticulosis and diverticulitis. So diverticulosis is a common condition that occurs when small pouches or sacs form and push outwards through weak spots in the wall of your colon. Oh God. So basically, in diverticulitis, one or a few of the pouches in the wall of your colon become inflamed. Itis meaning total infection. So around 50% of the people are thought to have diverticulosis by the age of 50 years. An estimated 10 to 25% of people with diverticulosis will go on to develop diverticulitis. By the age of 80 years old, an estimated 65% of people have diverticulosis. So it is very, very common. But unless the pouches become infected or inflamed, there are usually no major problems. So most people with diverticulosis do not have symptoms. Symptoms that you may experience may include constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain, or bloating. I sound like a Pepto-Bismol commercial right now. So diverticulitis most often causes abdominal pain, which is usually very, very severe. Experts are not sure what causes these conditions either. So, if you have diverticulosis or if you have diverticulitis in the past, your doctor may recommend eating more foods that are higher in fiber. So, some of the best sources of fiber, like I said, if you want to refer to the previous episode, it typically includes fruits, vegetables, particularly starchy ones, and whole grains. And basic treatments for diverticulosis includes fiber, medicines, and probiotics. Treatments for diverticulitis includes rest, oral antibiotics, and a liquid diet. So, if your diverticulitis causes problems, you may need additional treatments that goes beyond what we just talked about.
Mm.
Again, that's not a fun. This is not a fun condition, and please go to your colonoscopy. Like, don't push it.
With
Don't
that
push.
being said, I have a story time, which
Oh,
will
it's story time.
which will
Just keep.
emphasize the importance of going and getting checked out if you feel like anything is going wrong. So a client of mine, her husband actually has diverticulitis, so that's when the pouches become infected. So that's like kind of the worst of the two.
Right.
And he was having pain and obviously, was putting off going to the doctor because the checkups are rather invasive, so didn't want to go. After some time, he actually became a little bit like sick and feverish and noticed something odd about his urine. So he went to the doctor, and turns out one of those inflamed pouches protruded through his intestine and into his bladder. So feces was actually being drained into the bladder and all of the bacteria involved. He didn't know that's not good. E. coli should not be in your bladder. So,
I'm horrified.
yeah, go to the doctor, talk to a dietitian if you're having
Oh
some
God.
problems.
Definitely consult your doctor. Holy shit.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, you don't want the bacteria from your intestines and your colon anywhere else. Like, you can get really sick from that. And he was borderline like sepsis. So,
That I mean, that's like the wrong way for stuff to come out. I'm just saying.
yeah, yeah,
That's just
yeah,
so
yeah.
definitely get your colonoscopy. Make sure you eat some high fiber foods. I mean, the sound of having pouches in your body, that just sounds gross.
Protruding through your intestines, like, what?
I mean, just get checked. Make sure you go to see a health professional regularly. Make sure you're on your shit. Okay?
Literally.
Oh man. So, with that being said, let's dive into the next disease, and that is, disease. It's a condition called lactose intolerance. We may have briefly touched upon this on a previous episode. I'm not sure which one it was. So, basically, if you have lactose intolerance, you have digestive symptoms such as bloating, diarrhea, and gas. after you consume foods or drinks that contain lactose, and typically dairy includes lactose. So, lactose intolerance may affect your health if it keeps you from getting enough nutrients such as calcium and vitamin D. So, symptoms of intolerance, obviously, we already talked about it, bloating, diarrhea, gas, and it also includes nausea and pain in your abdomen. Lactose intolerance is caused by lactose malabsorption, a condition which your small intestine makes low levels of lactase or none at all, depending on the person and whatnot. And basically can't digest all the lactose you eat or drink. So um, lactose intolerance is a spectrum. Like it's not an all or nothing thing. Like some people can produce some lactase, some people can't produce any. Some people can tolerate certain types of food. Like myself, for example, I'm mildly lactose intolerant. I can't drink regular milk because that fucks up my stomach. But
Yeah.
But just a quick tip, yogurt and cheese, they're a little bit more fermented, so that means the lactose in those dairy products are
Mhm.
broken down. That means you're able to tolerate it more.
Mhm.
So just food for thought.
And it changes with age too. You know, your
Right,
body
right,
becomes less efficient at making certain enzymes. Lactase is one of them. So
right.
your lactose intolerance may change.
Right. And there is some people do talk about that there is a slight genetic component to this. So keep that in mind as well if your parents or your grandparents have this as well. And you can avoid some dairy products and choose alternative sources that make sure that includes calcium and vitamin D in it. Or you can use lactase products, so basically enzymes that you can take orally with your food, and that can help you out in managing the symptoms.
I remember you used to carry that in your backpack.
Yes, but now I know which foods to watch out for, and
You
I'm
know, you just gotta pay attention to your body and work with it. So the next one we're gonna move into, which is acid reflux. I'm sure this is very common. This is another one that you go through phases from time to time with, depending on some other factors in your life. But gastroesophageal reflux, which is GER, happens when your stomach acid contents, which is primarily the acid, come back up through your esophagus, causing heartburn, also known as acid reflux. So, gastroesophageal reflux disease, which is GERD or GERD, is a long lasting and more serious form of GER, which is the gastroesophageal reflux. So, the most common symptom of GERD, which is the reflux disease, is persistent heartburn. And this happens when your esophageal sphincter becomes weak or relaxes when it shouldn't. So, that sphincter typically opens and closes. And when it's closed, like there's nothing, yeah, pretty much just like that. You know, when that sphincter, when food goes down, the sphincter should open, but nothing should come back up, you know? So if that sphincter is relaxed, things start going the wrong way. So, you can reduce your GERD symptoms by changing your diet and avoiding food and drink that may trigger or make your symptoms worse. This is pretty, everyone will experience different things, but the common foods are high fat foods, caffeine, chocolate, onions, peppermint, carbonated beverages, alcohol, and then citrus and tomato products. Again, everyone is different, so just pay attention. Depending on the severity of the heartburn and other symptoms, treatment for GERD could include lifestyle changes, medicines, or in some cases, even surgery.
so with that being said, how to avoid GERD. Let's go. So first off, chew gum. Chewing gum, not spearmint or peppermint, which can actually relax the lower esophageal sphincter. By chewing gum, you can increase the saliva production and reduce the amount of acid that is in the esophagus. Another thing is avoiding alcohol. Alcohol is a known irritant that can weaken the esophageal sphincter and trigger reflux symptoms. However, while some people may experience a spike in symptoms after just one drink, others can tolerate moderate amounts. So experiment to see which one works best for you. And make sure you keep good posture during and after a meal. It's a good idea to sit up while eating and avoid lying flat for a minimum of 2 hours after eating a meal. Standing up and walking around after a meal helps encourage gastric juices to keep flowing in the right direction. So another thing is avoid eating immediately before bed. I mean, that just sounds awful.
And
But
this is different than like an intermittent fasting standpoint or a weight loss standpoint. This is for acid reflux.
right. So digestion increases the amount of gastric acid present in the stomach. When you lay down, the ability of the LES, so the lower esophageal sphincter, to prevent stomach contents from traveling up the esophagus actually decreases. So occurring together, lots of stomach acid in a reclined position are basically a recipe for some terrible reflux heading your way. So timing can vary actually from individual to individual, but generally eating a full meal less than 3 or 4 hours before bed is not advisable for GERD sufferers. Eating right, additionally, for GERD does not have to mean cutting out all your favorite foods. Making just a few simple modifications to your current diet is often enough to help reduce the discomforts of GERD. So the goal is to create a diet based on healthy variety of foods that include fruits and vegetables, lean sources of protein, complex carbohydrates, and healthy fats. If you suspect that a food may be triggering or worsening your symptoms of GERD, try keeping a 1 week daily diary and just going from there. So
Just pay attention.
yeah, don't go to bed right away, idiot. Just kidding.
Pretty much.
So
So the next one we're going to go into is called Hirsch-Sprung disease. A shortened version of that is called HSCR. That's the abbreviation for it. Basically, it's a birth defect in which the nerve cells are missing at the end of a child's bowel. That is very problematic if you don't have nerve cells there.
mhm,
So normally the bowel contains many nerve cells along the length which control how the bowel works. When the bowel is missing nerve cells, it doesn't work well, pretty much because the bowel doesn't know like how to process things, so blockages are very common and stool does not move through the bowel normally. This disease is congenital, which means it's present at birth, but the symptoms are not always obvious at birth. They do know that genetic defects increase the chance of a child developing HSCR, but there unfortunately are no tests at this moment that can diagnose a child while the mother is still pregnant. Researchers are still trying to figure out if the mother's health history or lifestyle during pregnancy increases the chance of this disease. So it's still pretty unknown at this point.
mhm.
There's a genetic component, but other than that, just cross your fingers, I guess.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. More often than not, the symptoms will be growth failure because they're not, getting nutrients correctly.
Right.
Swelling of the abdomen or the stomach area. Unexplained fever is common too, and then vomiting.
So obviously, definitely contact your health professional to figure out more ways to help resolve or not make it
And
worse. I
and
don't know.
diagnosis too, because swelling of the abdomen that could be so many different things.
That could probably keep you full from and make prevent you from eating the amount of food that you need to eat as well.
Exactly. If you have a bowel obstruction and things aren't moving properly, that can throw off your hunger and fullness hormones, which leads not eating correctly. It's a whole problem. So,
So definitely get that checked out, or if you suspect your kid may have it or somebody else may have it as well.
definitely.
So with the next thing and the final fun disease, or I guess state of gut is I'm sure a lot of you guys know is bowel incontinence, where sometimes you just let a little bit go. So fecal incontinence is also known as accidental bowel leakage. And it's the accidental passing of solid or liquid stools from your anus. You may have a strong urge to have a bowel movement and not be able to control it. You may have bowel leakage and you may not even know it as well. I mean, typically, from there's not a direct cause to this. I mean, the causes do depend on if you have any like previous diseases or anything. Um, but from my experience, the older you get, I mean, I mean, it's not gonna happen when we're 50, hopefully, but, like, towards the end of life, this tends to happen more often. Um, so
I
that's
think just
one thing.
it's related to your muscle contractions too, and it
Right,
kind of
right.
lose control of those things.
Right, and if you already have digestive tract disorders and chronic diseases, that can affect it as well.
Mhm,
So obviously, your doctor plays a huge role in trying to find ways to recommend managing this and to help treat it. And basically, make sure you play an active role in your treatment by talking openly and honestly with your doctor, um, just to make sure like you don't accidentally let a little bit go. I mean, sometimes it's gonna happen, and oftentimes than not, I do see adults wearing diapers, just to help control that. I mean, it's a little bit there's not a cure for this, so
mhm.
it just
Also,
tends to
a lot of
happen.
medications can play a
Right,
role in this too. Anything that's a muscle relaxant when you
right,
lose control, because your intestines, there's, muscles there, smooth muscle tissue that helps with contractions. Muscle relaxants are gonna.
right. I mean, if you think about it, like peeing, like there's been cases of people like you laugh so hard you pee a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
That's like you can't control what happens down there.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's a similar case, except this lasts a little bit.
yeah.
So,
So very common, especially in older age, but it can happen with some of these other conditions as well. So, since we're talking about the gut, I do want to bring up how your gut microbiota influences some of these diseases. We're going to have a whole separate episode on
mhm,
the bacteria in your gut, but those bacteria play a huge role. So, before I get into some of the more details of it, this is not a cause and effect. Like, just because you have a certain gut microbiome doesn't mean you're going to have specific diseases. There are
right,
many other factors, physical activity, lifestyle choices play a much bigger role. This is just one piece of like the
mhm,
thousand-piece puzzle that is like health.
right,
But diving in, there are actually more than 1 trillion symbiotic microorganisms that live in and on our bodies, and they all play, that's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. I think they make up like one third of our weight or something like that. Don't quote me, but I've heard that somewhere. It's crazy. So you're actually more bacteria than you are
So
human
you
being.
so you tell me in order to lose weight, I need to get rid of that bacteria. That's what you're trying to
Oh
say.
my gosh.
I'm just saying.
No,
So
but seriously, you are more bacteria than you are human being. There are 150 times more genes from all these bacteria than actual human genes on the human body.
so we're aliens.
I don't know. But
You're
there's
the one that suggested it.
no, but bacteria aren't aliens. They were here before us. We're the aliens.
This is true. We're some weird looking motherfuckers.
If you look at like every other animal, like we're the weird ones.
Anyways.
Moving on. So, because there are so many bacteria with within us and on us, it has,
Right.
become a very big field of research because they need to see how these bacteria actually regulate some of our other things. So there has been a lot of research going on, and important advances that we've seen is that the microbiome is involved in a lot of basic biological processes, such as regulating the epithelial development and influencing immunity as well. It also plays an influence in chronic diseases such as obesity, inflammatory bowel disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, atherosclerosis, alcoholic liver disease, and non alcoholic liver disease as well. Cirrhosis have all been associated with the human microbiome. Additionally, a portion of these metabolic processes are the microbiota helps metabolize like undigested carbohydrates and helps us synthesize some of our vitamins. So
Mhm.
when that process isn't happening correctly, that's how other diseases can start to take place. Because the gut is involved with the immune response, this could explain some of Crohn's disease, but there's not nearly enough research yet. It's just kind of a hypothesis at this point that your gut microbiome is related to your immune response, which could play a part in almost any immune response too. But again, just a theory that they're testing right now.
Right. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, our microbiome plays a huge part
There's
in
so many.
everything, and we'll get more into that in the next couple episodes to help finish out Gut Month. So,
Sounds good.
so with that being said, let's go into this week's social media shout out, and it goes to at Markel's Market, and her name is Markel Reed, and she is a dietitian. And basically, she has a lot of good food pictures, adventure pictures, and she promotes a pretty body positive page as well. And she's into nutrition consulting, so definitely check her out. And thank you for your support. We do appreciate it, and we do see it. And yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. All right, that wraps up our episode for today. Stay tuned for Gut Month to come.
Oh yeah. Thank you guys so much, and let us know how you feel. If we're actually more alien than human, I do want to know. But
Oh my
anyways.
Yeah. All right, thank you guys, and we will catch you in the next one.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Keeping It Juicy podcast.
Your main squeeze in nutrition.
Don't forget to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for a brand new episode.
Also, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Keeping It Juicy Podcast.
We'd love to hear from you, so please leave us a review.
5 stars, no less.
On whatever platform you're listening to, or send us an email at keepingitjuicypodcast@gmail.com.
Or if you have any topics you'd like for us to touch upon, shoot us an email. Until next time, don't do anything that I wouldn't do.
How do I say that word?
Hirschsprung. That's going in the bloopers.
Hirschsprung disease.
Hirschsprung
disease.
Hirschsprung
disease.
Hirschsprung.
Hirschsprung.
Hirschsprung disease.
Yeah.
Hirschsprung disease.
Okay, that's enough.
Got it. I got it.
One day we'll finish this episode.
I just need to take a breather.